Hey friends, today we are going to exercise our big brain muscles reading this fourth grade level text, okay? So before we get started, the first thing I'm going to notice is the title of the text, Kennedy Space Center History in the Making. Now, looking at your title and taking some time to activate your background knowledge is so important. So, I'm always looking at the title because the title can tell me a lot about the text, what the text is going to be about, and it can help me to think, what do I already know about the topic? So, my brain is not working as hard when I start reading. So, the Kennedy Space Center. Okay, so I am thinking, what is a space center? Well, space center kind of reminds me of like a discovery center where kids go and they can learn about like different topics and things like that. So maybe it might be something like that. But then I'm also looking at this where it says history in the making. So I know when I think about space, I often think about like people traveling to space or people going to space. I think about astronauts and just like the study of the planets and things like that. So maybe a space center is a place where people are learning about space and they're studying space. And this particular space center, the Kennedy Space Center, sounds like the name of a specific one. They are going to make history. Okay, so they're going to do something at the Kennedy Space Center that makes history. That's what I think about when I think about the second part that says history in the making. Now, all the things that are coming to my mind as I look at this title are all real things. So we see space center. I know space is real. I know history is real. It sounds like this space center is going to be making history. All of these things that we're talking about right now sounds real. So I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that this text is nonfiction. Nonfiction means it is real, okay? This is a text that is going to be talking about something that is real. It's not a made up story. It's not a poem talking about something fictional. This is real deal, real life stuff, okay? So when I'm reading a nonfiction text, I'm always thinking main idea and supporting details. That's always on my mind when I have a real text in front of me. So I know the main idea is what the text is mostly about. It is made up of the topic plus what the author is saying about the topic. I'm already thinking, right? Kennedy Space Center, this right here, Kennedy Space Center, is the topic. And I feel like the author's point or what the author is going to say about the topic, actually, we don't even have to write anything. I feel like it's this, that the Kennedy Space Center is history in the making, that the Kennedy Space Center made history by. Okay, so now I need to see, what did the Kennedy Space Center do, or what are they doing that is making history? As I'm reading through the text, that is what I'm asking myself. As I continue to preview this text, I also notice that it is not that long. So this text is actually just a page and a half. So I also notice these right here. A couple of my paragraphs are numbered. Now, this does not tell me, oh, these are the important paragraphs. These are the paragraphs that I need to read closely. I'm reading the whole text closely. I'm taking my time to think deeply about everything that is happening here, but I do know that these paragraphs are probably going to be where some of my answers are coming from. So I know I'm probably going to see a question that's like in paragraph 1, based on paragraph 4. So I know I'm going to see that. So I'm just making sure I make note of that in my mind as I'm reading. I already feel like I am ready to start reading. I've already activated some background knowledge. I'm thinking about the main idea already based on my text features, which I don't have a lot. I just have the title. That's the only text feature that I really see here. And then I've started to think, okay, so the Kennedy Space Center is going to make history. How are they going to do that? I have to read to find out. So let's go ahead and jump into paragraph 1. In the span of human history, 50 years is a short amount of time. However, Within that time, humans have discovered a way to send a rocket into space. So this is confirming, okay, Space Center. We're talking about sending rockets into space. Not only have we sent rockets into space, but we have also traveled there ourselves. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, first began working on space exploration in 1958. 2 years later, President Kennedy, I'm thinking like maybe the Kennedy Space Center is like named after President Kennedy. President Kennedy declared his vision of landing the first man on the moon, and NASA rose to the challenge. Within 12 years of its existence, NASA created a way for humans to land on the moon. That definitely sounds like making history. Okay, that definitely sounds like making history to me. Since that time, hundreds of spacecrafts have been launched into space, continuing to make history, not just sending men to the moon, but continuing to go back. Some crafts contained people in them, while some did not. And the place where these crafts were launched into space was a small piece of land located on the western coast of Florida called Cape Canaveral. So Cape Canaveral is where these things are happening. It's where they are being launched out, where they are really making history. Europeans first came to Cape Canaveral in 1531 when Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon came looking for the Fountain of Youth. Over the following 427 years, the Cape remained a quiet home for wildlife. However, all of that changed in 1958. Wait a second. 1958 is the year. Oh, that was not straight, y'all. 1958 was the year that NASA first began working on space exploration. So 1958, everything changes on Cape Canaveral. Let's see what happens there. That year, newly formed NASA decided to create its Space Exploration Center on the Cape. So the Space Exploration Center, NASA's first Space Exploration Center, happened or was created on Cape Canaveral. At the time, Cape Canaveral was home to the Air Force. In the early stages of the space exploration program, NASA used the Cape Canaveral Air Force Base airfields. However, NASA eventually built its own space center. In addition to buildings, launch pads, and landing fields were built to support NASA's missions. The Space Center was originally called the Launch Operations Center. From this location, NASA would go on to send men into space and to the moon. Now, it says that it was originally called, so I'm thinking the name is probably going to change. I'm thinking that the first Space Center is probably going to turn into the Kennedy Space Center. Let's read on to find out. Within the first 3 years of the Launch Operations Center being opened, NASA sent astronaut Alan Shepard into space. Ooh, that sounds like history. The mission marked the first time an American flew into space. Yes, that definitely sounds like making history right there. A few weeks after Shepard's successful flight, President John Kennedy gave a speech that would forever change space exploration in the United States. In that speech, President Kennedy claimed that the United States was in a race with other countries. The race was to see who would be the first country to land a man on the moon. This speech pushed the young space program to achieve the impossible. So President Kennedy basically inspired them or pushed them to go ahead and achieve that hard goal of landing a man on the moon. NASA wanted to honor President Kennedy for his support in space exploration, so in 1963, they decided to rename the Launch Operations Center as the Kennedy Space Center. Okay, confirming my thinking on that. Throughout the 1960s, the Kennedy Space Center expanded in order to meet the needs of the growing Space Center. During this time, NASA continued to launch rockets into space. Each time a spacecraft was launched, scientists studied the flight to see what worked and what needed to be changed. So they're studying and they're seeing how can they get better here at Cape Canaveral. Eventually, these flights led up to the historic flight of Apollo 11. We're talking about making history and they just called this flight historic. On July 1969, sorry y'all, Apollo 11 launched from Cape Canaveral, taking astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Aldrin to the moon. So these astronauts went to the moon from Cape Canaveral. 4 days later, the craft landed on the moon. Astronaut Neil Armstrong exited the spacecraft and took the first steps on the moon. Great. So definitely making history here. First steps ever on the moon. Before the year was over, another spacecraft was sent to the moon from Kennedy Space Center. The small strip of land off the eastern coast of Florida became the world's most famous launch pad. So it's the world's most famous launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center. The center continues to be an important part of NASA's program. So it's not just history before, but they're continuing to make history. Over the following decades, the Kennedy Space Center supported missions not only to the moon, but also to other planets such as Mars and Jupiter. It sends missions to the International Space Station. This is a station where astronauts from all over the world work, study, and live while they are in space. Cool. So continuing to make history. As a result of its place in history and its importance to the future, the Kennedy Space Center is a popular tourist attraction. So what really makes me interested in that sentence is that it has its place in history and it's important to the future. Every year, millions of people tour its buildings and launch pads in order to see where history was made. The Kennedy Space Center remains one of the world's most important space centers, continuing to make history. And every day, NASA continues to make history there. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So before I even get into the questions, I want to start and put together the whole text. This will help me as I'm answering my questions to put things together. So I definitely feel like I support my main thought about the main idea, or my previous thought about the main idea, right? Where the main idea of this text is really talking about how the Kennedy Space Center made history. And how did they make history? They made history by sending. Well, first of all, it was one of the first, I think it was the first space exploration center by NASA, right? And when President Kennedy gave that speech, it really encouraged them to send a man to the moon. So what did they do? They sent a man to the moon. And the Apollo 11 is when these astronauts went to the moon, and astronaut Neil Armstrong helped America to win the space race by being the first man to ever take steps on the moon. And not only did they do that, but they continued to send other people out. They continued to learn about space, and they're continuing to make history as one of the world's most important space centers. All right, so we have kind of put that text together in our mind. Now we are going to get down to answering these questions. Which statement summarizes the text? I know a summary tells like kind of what the whole text was about. So which of these is telling me what the whole text is about? The Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral has a strong history with its space program. Really love this question because it has my topic in it, the Kennedy Space Center, and it also talks about how the Kennedy Space Center is making history with its space program. Love that option. Let's see if that one is the best or if there's a better. What's this one? President Kennedy had many reasons for putting people on the moon. This whole text does not really talk about his many reasons of putting people on the moon. We don't hear it like giving all of his different reasons. This does not seem what the text is mostly about. Cape Canaveral is mostly a place for learning the history of space travel. Okay, I can kind of see where that's coming from, but I'm thinking about, does the text talk more about like Cape Canaveral and how Cape Canaveral is important for learning about space, the history of space? I don't know. I don't feel like that's a terrible option, but I don't think it's one that I feel like I could circle right now. Cape Canaveral has changed greatly since Europeans first came to the area. This is true. It's a true statement, but I do not think it is a statement that describes what the text is mostly about. It doesn't even really mention space. So right now I have A and C. The Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral has a strong history with its space program, and Cape Canaveral is mostly a place for learning the history of space travel. I am going to go with A because it has the Kennedy Space Center in it, which I know was the topic of the text, and it's talking about how the Kennedy Space Center made history. Let's look at question 10. What did the author mean by stating in paragraph 1 that NASA rose to the challenge? Okay. I can go back to paragraph 1 if I feel like I need a refresher here. So paragraph 1, NASA rose to the challenge. I'm looking for that. Okay, wait, I see it right here in this sentence. I'm going to highlight it in pink so we can easily see. NASA rose to the challenge. Okay, so 2 years later, so after space, NASA was formed to begin working on space exploration. 2 years later, President Kennedy declared his vision of landing the first man on the moon, and NASA rose to the challenge. Okay, so this is kind of saying like NASA did what it needed to do to make Kennedy's vision come true, right? They made Kennedy's vision of a man going to the moon come true. Let's see which of these answer choices actually kind of sounds like that. NASA succeeded in fulfilling President Kennedy's vision. Yes, that's kind of exactly what I just said. So I am really liking A again. I'm going to make sure, though, that I read all the answer choices because sometimes they could give us like a good one for A and then D has like the best one. I want to make sure I'm circling the best answer. So let's see if I can find a better answer or if we're going to go with A again. NASA found a location from which to launch its spacecrafts. Well, wait, rose to the challenge. The challenge that they're talking about in that sentence is landing a man on the moon. No, I'm not thinking it wasn't about launching or finding a location to launch. NASA began working on space travel in 1958. No, when he said that they rose to the challenge, they had actually started the space exploration already. So he said this in 1960, 2 years after they had already started that. So that's not what he's talking about. And then NASA created a space center that became famous. Well, his vision, when it says they rose to the challenge, they're talking about they rose to the challenge of Kennedy's vision. So them creating a space center that became famous was not the vision. The vision was for them to succeed in sending a man to space. A is the closest answer to that, liking that one. How does the author, number 11, how does the author best show that President Kennedy supported space exploration? So I'm thinking about how does he show in the text that Kennedy supported space exploration? I'm going to come up with an answer in my head first, and then I'm going to see which of these is closest to what I think. So I think the author best showed that Kennedy supported space exploration when he gave this speech. Down here, I remember that in the text. I think it's in paragraph. Let's see. Let's try to find it. In paragraph 3. Yep. So here we see that Kennedy gave that speech that would forever change exploration. In the speech, he claimed that the United States was in a race, and the race was to see who was the first country to land a man in the moon. And it really encouraged the space people the space people. It really encouraged NASA to push forward in meeting that goal. And they honored him for his support in space exploration after this. So that really kind of shows that he supported it. So let's go ahead. Let's look. How does the author best show? Let's see what they said, including details about Kennedy's involvement in building the Space Center. I do not actually hear them talking about him building the Space Center. I don't remember that being in the text, like he helped them build it. I know he encouraged them to like set it up and things like that, but I don't remember him like being involved in the building. By mentioning that Kennedy Space Center was named after Kennedy or President Kennedy, I feel like this is an effect of him supporting space exploration, and it's not necessarily showing that he supports space exploration, but I'm going to keep that one just in case. By showing that President Kennedy wanted the US to be the first country to land on the moon. Yo, this one is real close to what I just said. When I was looking over here at the text, right? And I was looking at I didn't mean to do that. Hold on. And I was looking at this here. Oh, yeah, I could have zoomed this in for you so you could have seen it better. Wow. Okay, fine. But when I was looking here at this part, I know that that speech was what really encouraged them and showed their support, and it pushed them to land a man on the moon. So I am definitely thinking that it is this one because that was close to my thinking. Let me go ahead and look at D, though, to make sure I'm not passing a really good option. By providing information about Kennedy's desire, no, he would never said that in the text that he wanted to go to the moon himself. Never saw that. All right, let's look at number 12. Why did Cape Canaveral change in the 1950s? Wait a second. I think I know this, right? Because it said all of that changed in 1950. That year, newly formed NASA decided to create a space exploration center on the Cape. So why did it change in the 1950s? Because NASA built their first space exploration on the Cape. So let's see which one of these sounds like that. Spanish explorers Ponce de Leon came looking for the fountain of youth. What did he do that? No, he did that in 1531. So that show ain't the answer. Cape Canaveral became a quiet home for wildlife. No, sir. That was when Ponce came to there. So that was again the 1500s. NASA decided to create a space exploration center on Cape Canaveral. Yes, this is like literally the part of the text that we just looked at and was like, So let's read D just to make sure we're not passing a good one. The Air Force decided to go. No, we're not talking about no Air Force up in this passage. Let's read the whole option though, because y'all, I do that. I like hear some parts of it and then but maybe there could be a connection. So let's read the whole part. The Air Force decided to call Cape Canaveral home. No. All right, let's look at question 13. In paragraph 1, what is the meaning of existence? Existence. Okay, I know when something is existing, it's like it's alive. It's real, it's a part of reality. I'm looking at these answer choices though, being justified, being formed, being accepted, being recognized. And I'm not kind of seeing any of that here. So I'm going to go back to paragraph 1 and I'm looking for the meaning of existence. So I need to look for existence in paragraph 1. I'm just scanning paragraph 1 for the word existence. I'll give you $20 if you find it before me. Oh, wait, I found it. Okay. Within 12 years of its existence, NASA created a way for humans to land on the moon. Okay. So within 12 years of its existence. So here it sounds like within 12 years of it being created, within 12 years of it being built, kind of, is what I hear in that sentence. So let's see if there's an option that kind of says something like that. Within 12 years of it being justified, That doesn't really sound like built or created. Within 12 years of it being formed, formed kind of sounds like created, so I'm liking that. Within 5 or 12 years of it being accepted, within 5 years of it becoming recognized, or 12 years of it becoming recognized, I'm not thinking so. So I think I'm going to go with answer choice B, because when I read that sentence, I thought that it made sense. Another word that made sense and didn't change the meaning of that was created, and the word that's closest to created there is formed. Which detail from this selection, this is number 14, best shows what first made Cape Canaveral famous? So this I need to pay attention to very closely. It says which best shows. So that means all of them might show, but I need to find the one that does it best. And what first made Cape Canaveral famous, okay? So I remember from the text that Cape Canaveral first became famous because dude had went there to look for the fountain of youth. So that's like when Europeans first came over there. So I'm keeping that in my mind as I look at this part. I can even go back to the text to make sure I'm correct on that. So Cape Canaveral, this is the first time I really see it in the text. I see it in the text for the first time right here. But this one says small piece of land called Cape Canaveral. Yeah, that doesn't give me any information. Europeans first came to Cape Canaveral in 1531 when Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon came looking for the Fountain of Youth. Right. So let's see. A piece of land located on the east coast of Florida called Cape Canaveral. Yo, this does not tell me that this doesn't show me what made it famous. So that's dumb. Europeans first came to Cape Canaveral in 1531. Yo, this is like exactly what I just said. But let's look at the other options before we 100% go with that one. At the time, Cape Canaveral was home to the Air Force. That doesn't show like how, that doesn't tell me about how it first became like famous. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 launched from Cape Canaveral. Again, not when it was first famous. It first became kind of well known when Europeans came over there to look for the Fountain of Youth. I'm sticking with B. Number 15. What is the main idea of paragraph 6? Let's go back to paragraph 6. Okay, wait. Paragraph 6 I'm seeing is like the ending paragraph. This is like our conclusion of the text. I know this usually wraps up the text, kind of restates the author's main idea. As a result, I'm going to go ahead and reread it. As a result of its place in history and its importance to the future, the Kennedy Space Center is a popular tourist attraction. Every year, millions of people tour its buildings and launch pads in order to see where history was made. The Kennedy Space Center remains one of the world's most important space centers, and every day NASA continues to make history there. Okay, so let's see which one of these sums that up. The Kennedy Space Center has become a historical attraction that people want to see. This was definitely in the text. I saw that, like them talking about how it made history and how people want to see it. The Kennedy Space Center has tours for tourists to explore their buildings and launch pads. That was in the text. Like, those are very similar ones. So this might be a more trickier question. As it's placed in history, it became a popular tourist attraction. Every year, millions of people tour its buildings and launch pads to see. Yeah, like that's in there. But to see where history was made. Ooh, this is tricky. Let's read the other one, see if maybe we could eliminate those. The Kennedy Space Center supported missions to the moon and other planets. That does not really talk about, that's not really talked about in paragraph 6. The Kennedy Space Center is the most important space center in the world. Suba, I could see you saying that, because it says it's the world's most important space center. But I'm thinking about main idea, which is like, what is the whole thing talking about together? I feel like it's mostly talking about how it made history, so people want to see it, and it's like continuing to make history every day. Oh Jesus, this one is difficult, y'all, because this is why this one is tricky to me, because A and B are very kind of similar, where the Kennedy Space Center has become a historical attraction that people want to see, and the Kennedy Space Center has tours for tourists, well, to explore their buildings and launch pads. Wait a second, as I'm reading this, I am liking how this says historical attraction, because it's also talking in that paragraph, not just that tourists want to see it, but also that it's like has importance. I'm going with A, y'all, because it's saying how it has importance to people because of its history. Y'all, hold on. I'm going to pull up the answer key to this one to check just to make sure. The answer is A. You guys, we are so smart, because this is correct. And I'm going to say that I feel like this part right here really makes this answer choice, the historical attraction part, because it's really also highlighting how it made history. Let's go ahead and continue on. We have 3 more questions. Which sentence from the text best explains why space exploration continued to grow at Cape Canaveral? Well, why do I think space exploration continued to grow there? Well, because they kept learning about space, and they kept continuing to launch like different missions and stuff like that. Within 12 years of its existence, NASA created a way for humans to land on the moon. Does this tell me why space exploration continued to grow there? I kind of don't think so. I'm going to exit it out. This speech pushed the space program to achieve the impossible. This one is kind of a cute answer, because that did help space, that speech that Kennedy gave did help space exploration to grow and to achieve the impossible. So I feel like that one's decent. Each time a spacecraft launched, scientists studied the flight to see what worked and what needed to be changed. That one is also a pretty good answer choice. This is another tricky one, because I'm actually really liking how that one sounds as well, because it's talking about how it's saying like why space exploration continued to grow at Cape Canaveral, and because like they studied and they thought about how the spacecrafts went out, and learned each time that they sent spacecrafts out to see what needed to change. Well, when I'm continuing to learn from my mistakes, I'm continuing to grow. Let's read D. Over the following decades, Kennedy Space Center supports missions not only to the moon, but also to other planets such as Mars and Jupiter. Y'all. Okay, I'm thinking B is the weaker of these 3, because D is actually a pretty solid answer too. So we really need to think, okay, which sentence from this text best explains why exploration continued to grow at Cape Canaveral? I have the answer key pulled up right now. We're going to try to think about this, and we're going to choose an answer, and then I'm gonna take a look. I have it on my computer over here, so I'm gonna take a look and see which one is correct, but I'm gonna push it away because we're not gonna look right now. We're gonna try to figure this out. Okay, so each time a spacecraft was launched, scientists studied the flight to see what worked and what needed to be changed. This does like make me think about growth, because it is really talking about how they wait a doggone minute though, because when the text says that, doesn't it talk about their mission to the moon? So during this time, let me find it. Throughout the 1960s, let me show y'all where I'm at. The Kennedy Space Center expanded in order to meet the needs of the growing space program. During this time, NASA continued to launch rockets into space. Wait, so this says the growing space program, and this is talking about how did they continue to grow. During this time, NASA continued to launch rockets into space. Each time a spacecraft was launched, scientists studied the flight to see what worked and what needed to be changed. Eventually, these flights led up to the historic flight of Apollo 11. Okay. Oh, wait, it's over here. Over the following decades, Kennedy Space Center supports missions, not only explains why exploration continued to grow at Cape Canaveral. Wait, though. Wait, is that talking about at Cape Canaveral? Like, did that happen at Cape Canaveral? The expanded to meet the needs. Because it's saying it expanded in order to meet the needs of the space program. During this time, NASA continued to launch rockets into space. I wonder though, are all of those because it expanded, does it mean it expanded like it grew on Cape Canaveral? Or does it mean it expanded like they created other space centers? Like, I don't know. During this time, NASA continued to launch rockets into space. Each time a spacecraft was launched, scientists studied the flight to see what worked and what needed to be changed. And these flights led up to the historic Apollo 11. Let me find the other sentence in the text. Do y'all see that other one? No. The center continues to be an important part of NASA's program. But see, this is talking about how it's still growing right now, where that's talking about how it was growing to lead up to the people being on the moon. This is talking about how it led up to Apollo 11, where this is talking about how the Space Center continues to be important. So it's continuing to grow. It didn't just stop at Apollo 11. It continued to do the big things after Apollo 11. It continued to grow after Apollo 11. Let's go back to the question. Why exploration continued to grow at Cape Canaveral? Y'all, okay. This is what I'm thinking. I'm leaning towards D. Hear me out. I know some of y'all are like, no, it's C. It's clearly C. Because looking at where you are and seeing what needs to be changed is the formula to growth. Like if you ever want to get better at something, practice it and then see like, okay, what am I doing wrong? How can I fix it? That's how you grow, right? But this answer choice is fire right here, y'all, where it says following decades, the Kennedy Space Center. Oh my God, y'all. This is my husband. Okay. The following decades, the Kennedy Space Center supports missions not only to the moon, but also to other planets. I feel like this one is showing how it grew, not just to be the man on the moon, but through the whole thing. Number 17, how does the author mainly structure the events in the passage? Okay, so I'm thinking about how does the author write about the events in the passage? Let me look back to the text and kind of think about this. So in the beginning, they talk about like when NASA was first formed, and then it talks about them making the first exploration center. It talks about the speech that Kennedy gave 3 years later. Then it talks about how they expanded. So really kind of feels like it's following in order because then it starts to talk about how NASA is nowsers. Oh wait, went too far. Nowsers. Wow. Why do I use these words? Okay, the author presents a problem, then solutions. No. The author organizes events chronologically. That's kind of what I just said, like going in order. The author describes a cause and an effect. Not really. The author lists several of NASA's accomplishments. Y'all, this is not a text structure. Listing several accomplishments, not a text structure. I feel like based on the text and what the text looks like, based on what we thought before we read the answer choices, is that the author organizes the events chronologically. So it talks about the order of events that happen. That's what we see when we're talking about chronologically. It talks about the order of events. So let's read our last question. Which statement best states a claim the author makes and supports in the selection? Okay. Again, best. So we need to read all of them to make sure that we have that together. Cape Canaveral became famous because of John F. Kennedy. No, it became famous when the Europeans came looking for the Fountain of Youth. John F. Kennedy was the first U.S. president to support space exploration. Maybe. John F. Kennedy had a huge impact on NASA's. I'm exiting out B because I feel like C is much stronger. John F. Kennedy had a huge impact on NASA's space exploration program. I definitely feel like that is something that the author makes and supports, especially when he talked about how his speech influenced them. And then D, the U.S. has sent more spacecrafts into space than any other country. Taking this out because I do not hear them talking about the number of spacecrafts that any other country sent. So for our last question, we are going to go with C. All right, y'all, those are all the questions for this passage. I really hope that as we were walking through this, you could see some strategies, some things that you can do. So when you are reading a passage, when you are looking at a text, it is easy for you to walk through that passage, walk through those questions, and gain a deep understanding of what you are reading.